Hey folks, welcome back to the channel. So I've decided in this video that I'm actually going to go ahead and finish the spare engine for Midnight Panic. I'm not going to go into great detail of the assembly or any of that stuff, and that's mostly because this is basically the identical engine to what is currently in the truck. And I did a 4-part series on that engine. So if you're really interested in the details of the engine, go ahead and go back a few videos to where I did that series on that engine itself. This one here you can see is covered in masking paper and tape, junkyard oil pan and timing cover on it. And that is mostly because I painted this engine, this short block, at the same time that I did the hood for the Peterbilt. And this is actually a complete short block assembly right now. I've already put the crank and the rods and the pistons, rings, all of that stuff is in this block currently. Now, some of the stuff I did at the same time as the first engine, like file fit the rings and stuff like that was already done before I even started assembling this one. So for the most part, that stuff all went together really easy. I did have to check oil clearances on the crank and the rods and stuff like that, but all of that is complete. It's done. The rotating assembly is in the block. And now the next step for me is to actually start mocking up and checking clearances on stuff with the heads. So I've got my mock-up head gasket here. I'll get this stuff all stripped off of the block, use my mock-up gasket and set a head on here and get it bolted down, torqued down, and start checking clearances like piston to valve clearance, using a bit of clay in the combustion chamber. Probably look into push rod lengths and stuff like that while I've got one head on it. And then from that point, once I know everything's good, I can actually install the real head gaskets, both heads. I have another intake manifold that will go on here. I'm going to need to set that up once the heads are on it, check port matching, all of that stuff. I know that the intake manifold that I have is going to need a little port work. I think the big block Ford, unfortunately, our only choice for a standard head with a blower manifold is a Chinese casting. So they need a little bit of work to make those right. So I've got that to do yet. And then more than likely, I will have to powder coat that manifold before I'm all done. Another bit of the project that I'm going to have to do is build the front motor plate because it sandwiches in between the block and the timing cover. So I've got to have that done before I can actually seal up this engine completely. Fortunately, I did get my other timing cover arrangement, so I have that on hand. And I have the aluminum here to build this front motor plate. So that will be a task for the CNC router, probably a little bit later on in the video. But other than that, I think what I'm going to do next is actually set you guys up, just turn on time lapse, and then I'm going to get started on mocking some of this stuff up. I figured I'd bring you guys in here really quick and show you what I've got going on. So as you can see, I had the head, the gasket, and everything bolted on here. I just torqued it down to about 50 foot-pounds just to make sure everything was sitting flat. I got a set of mock-up rollers in here, a couple of push rods that are really close to the right length, rocker arms, everything in place. And I rolled the engine over a couple of revolutions so that we could check the piston to valve clearance here. So you can see I've got a little bit of modeling clay in here, and then we're just looking for this, mostly this radial clearance right here. You can see where the valve pushed down into the clay, and then I've actually cut the clay back so you can see the valve relief or this valve pocket in the piston, and you want like a minimum of 60 thousandths here. I've got well over that. It's closer to probably 100, 110 if I was guessing. And then you want to look for the depth in here to make sure that you're not getting too close to the piston with the valve in this pocket as well. Now, if we zoom in there, you can see I've got plenty of clearance in that area as well. Again, the tightest point, probably 100 thousandths or more. And then on top of that, my mock-up gasket is actually a 40 thousandths thick gasket or 42 thousandths. And the gasket that I'm going to run on this engine is 80 thousandths. So pretty much you can add 40 thousandths to that measurement right there. So we got plenty of clearance. And then it's probably not ever necessary, but I check anyway. Just throw a couple dabs of clay in here and check for exhaust valve clearance. I've never run into an issue with that, but better safe than sorry. Now on the big engine, the 547 that I've run in the truck before, I actually had a radial clearance issue where the intake valve was almost touching this piston. And it was actually so close it was cutting the clay right down here in the pocket. So on that engine, I actually ended up having to fly cut each piston to get more clearance for that intake valve. So ever since then, I've been real careful to check that, even though these parts should work together with no issues. If we walk around here to the front of the engine, you can see I've got that junkyard timing cover off of there. Got my fuel pump drive spud and everything mounted back in place. So once I get that front motor plate built, I can actually put my front timing cover on. The next step for me is to clean off my clay mess there, get everything sorted in that area, and then I can put the correct head gaskets on and permanently bolt the heads on this engine. I got both heads on and torqued. Everything's done there. Looks pretty good. I set the manifold up here, just checking, alignment of the ports, see how bad this thing is. And actually, it looks really pretty good as far as port alignment. It's not terrible. The typical core shift in the casting, or they must set these things up in the machine and get the machine work all shifted one direction a little bit. It's kind of unfortunate, but I just have to make those corrections. Then I will have to drill and tap for the port nozzles. And then I don't like running the gasket between the manifold and the blower. So while it's on the mill, I'll go ahead and machine a groove for an 1/8 inch O-ring in here. And then it's going to need a little bit of work for distributor clearance. Once that's done, then I'll probably powder coat it, make it the dark gray to match the other one. The powder coating is mostly to make it easier to clean. These rough cast intake manifolds, anybody that's got a cast aluminum intake manifold on their truck, they know how much of a bugger it is to keep clean. This front motor plate here is actually kind of just a mock-up piece now. I didn't know it when I bought the material, but this is actually a piece of bar stock, not plate. So the way they make the bar stock is kind of a extruded piece. And this particular piece of material is actually tapered 15 thousandths from bottom to top. And that normally wouldn't be a big deal, but where I've got the timing cover, it's sandwiched between the timing cover and the block. So that would mean my timing cover would be kicked back one direction, that 15 thousandths. Again, probably wouldn't be a big deal, except for I have, stuff like my fuel pump running directly off this cover. So if it's kicked back, now my fuel pump's not going to be perfectly in line with the camshaft. So I opted to buy another piece of plate. And before I bought that material, I messaged the seller and made sure that it was actually 1/4 inch plate, not bar stock. So I've already measured it. It's straight, not tapered. So we should be good to cut another one of these out. I've got the DXF file and basically the tool path and everything to do this on the CNC table. So it's not a huge deal, just a little bit of a learning curve on that one right there. Also worth noting, the timing cover setup that I've got here, DT machine. I didn't know that this one was going to be raw aluminum. It's not a big deal. I like the way it looks. But the one that's on the truck now is actually anodized black. So it fits well with my, my dark valve covers, the powder coated gunmetal gray, intake manifold, stuff like that. Had I known that this was going to be, the raw machined, all nearly polished aluminum, I might have bought a polished intake manifold. That would have looked slick, pretty much just like this, only shiny. However, since I didn't, this is the one I've got, I may go ahead and powder coat that timing cover the same gray color as the intake manifold. That might look pretty good too. We'll just have to play it by ear. However, today I think I'm going to call it good for this project because we have monster trucks in town. So the family and myself are going to go down and just be spectators. We're not on the agenda, so we're going to go pretend to be some super fans and just enjoy the show. Maybe I'll throw a clip of some other trucks in this video while we're at it. All right, it's a new day. Time to get back to business on this unit. So what I'm going to do to start with is clean off my Bridgeport there so I can get that chunk of aluminum set up there and start doing all the machine work prior to getting the thing powder coated. Well, as you can see in that last time lapse, I've made a couple of modifications to the oil pan. I will show you that once I get it mounted here on the engine. But before buttoning this up, I figured I'd bring you over, show you this bottom end before I get it sealed up, hopefully for a long time. You can see, obviously, aluminum rods. So this is an offset ground 429 forged truck crank. So this started out as basically a dump truck or a propane truck crankshaft. It is offset ground to stock Ford 460 stroke. So they make that rod journal smaller and move it over. So in a sense, this is a small journal 460. 6/800 aluminum GRP rods. UEM or Icon, Keith Black, they're all made by UEM forged pistons. And then this windage tray right here works with that oil pan. It's specific to the oil pan that I'm putting on here. And that's why it's only covering the front 4 cylinders. That oil pan actually just barely clears the mains and the crank as it is. And then it comes up to this sump area. Same with this pickup that is also designed for the oil pan. And then I've got my Kazi aluminum pump. And the biggest reason for running this pump is where John beefs up this area right here. You start getting rude with the big block Ford and you can actually break the cast iron pump off here. It's kind of a little bit spindly. So they've taken and built this pump pretty girthy. It's a pretty beefy unit in this area. So hopefully I won't ever have any trouble with that. So far so good with the ones I've run so far. And then you can see I've got the front motor plate and then the timing cover arrangement all mounted, sealed up. So that's all done. Obviously, I didn't paint the timing or powder coat the timing cover. And that was mostly because I didn't want to deal with the powder coat buildup in certain areas, like all the counter sunk bolt holes. And then these areas for the standoffs for the crank support. Just didn't want to have to deal with that. So this one's going to stay just natural aluminum. So what I'm going to do next is go get that oil pan, make sure everything's cleaned up, get my one-piece gasket put on here, and then seal the bottom of this thing up. All right, oil pan is installed. Looks like it's sealed up nicely. This is a used oil pan. It has spent many years in the buggy, and now it's going to do service in the monster truck. So the welding part of the project is actually those pipe bungs that I welded in the front corners of the sump there. And those are actually for oil heaters. So I've got a couple of these Moroso oil heaters. I'm going to install those. That way I can preheat the engine oil before running the truck. Currently, I've been running a couple of 200-watt magnetic heaters, and they're just really slow and they don't get the oil that hot. These here should be much quicker, a lot more effective. And then here on the side, I welded a bung in for an 1/8-inch pipe plug, and that's just simply oil level. There's no provisions on this engine for a dipstick. So you've got a level plug for that purpose. And then while I was welding on it, as I mentioned, this oil pan spent quite a few years in the buggy, and at some point it took a rock hit to this corner here. And when I was cleaning everything up, it kind of looked like this seam was split or starting to split. So I went ahead and ground that out, welded it up. The dent itself won't hurt nothing as long as it doesn't leak. So now the bottom end of this thing is all sealed up. Next step is to roll the engine over, get the intake manifold on it, and then this thing will be pretty much ready whenever I need it. cheap oil to clean it out.
Cheap.
Probably should see about 65 or 70 psi with this oil cold. Closer to 80 pounds, huh? That's good. Nothing to the top end yet, though. Guess I'll roll it over and prime it. See how that works. Starting to get oil in the top end now. Plenty of it.
Yeah.
That was the last one I was waiting for on this side. Everything else is flowing away. Right over here. I'd like to see oil come out of it. Right here. Probably any second. There it is. Looking pretty good. Well, there it is. My spare engine for the monster truck is pretty much complete. There are a couple of things to do yet, like under the valve covers. You saw in the time lapse that I put the rocker arms and the push rods in and set the valve lash. However, that is just a bare bones basic setup on the valve train. I actually still need to install the Jomar stud girdles. And the reason that stuff is just a bare bones setup and no stud girdles yet is because I actually need just a touch shorter push rod. So I have those ordered. They should be here probably in a week or so. And then I can actually do the valve lash for real, install the stud girdles, and then the top end of the engine will be complete. I've got a couple little minor machining projects to do up front here, like the crank support arrangement. I need to get that set up and built. I need to build a retaining washer for the crankshaft bolt. But to do all of that, I actually need to get another blower pulley. So I think I'm going to order the same one that's on the truck. Then I'll have a spare. If I never use it as a spare, everything will be on here, set up, ready to go. I've also got a V pulley for running the alternator that needs just a little bit of machine work to sandwich between the blower pulley and the drive hub. And then I've got a couple of spacers that I need to build that fit between the motor plate and the head here. And then probably the bigger part of the project is actually do something with this distributor. Now I've got a distributor here that I've already modified. This is the one for the big engine, the 547. And this is, for the most part, this is the same distributor as that one. I just built a shorter stem and then shortened the shaft, put all the guts back together. So this blower actually sits in the stock location and it fits below the blower here. Now, the reason I'm not using this one is because one, it's already set up for the big engine. So you can see it's got the big cap and the manifold that is on the big engine, the 547, fits a big cap distributor. These manifolds that I have on the smaller engines will not fit a big cap distributor. So the engine that's in the truck is running an offset. So I have to decide if I want to shorten this distributor, just like the one I showed you, and have everything fit under the blower with this small cap, which would be fine. Or I can take some parts that I have here and build another offset and then put a big cap on this assembly and just move it out here. I'm kind of up in the air on that. I've got a little bit of thinking, and I've got time to think about it and sort it out. As far as if we need this engine, let's say something happens at the next show, we damage the engine or it starts making some noise. Once I get the push rods, this engine could go in the truck in a matter of a couple of hours. So for the most part, it is done as a spare. If I don't end up using the engine, say before this summer, probably just spend a little bit more time finishing up those little machine work projects. Maybe even set it up on the stand, fire this thing up. You can, we could set the timing and get everything arranged so then it is even more of a drop-in unit. Hopefully we won't need it until next year. I'm hoping that the engine that's in the truck runs great for the rest of the season. And then this winter we can just plop this one in and pull the other one out and freshen it up. Speaking of upcoming shows and the monster truck, that's what we're going to do in the next video. I have to go back to work for 5 days, and then we will start preparation for Duchesne, Utah, the 21st. So aside from putting on a good show and trying to bring the truck back in one piece, one of my goals for this show is actually to get you guys some good in-cab footage with my GoPro. Now, 90% of the time, I have at least one camera in the truck. It's ready to go. I just never remember to turn it on. And part of the problem with that is I physically can't reach the camera to reach up there and turn the camera on. Now, I could hit the record button prior to strapping in. That's not a big deal. I just don't remember to do that. Well, I was digging through some of the stuff I have here in the office, and I actually have a Bluetooth remote for my camera. So what I'm going to do before this next show is get that remote mounted on the dash, preferably near maybe the fuel shutoff or the kill switch. So at least there's a chance that I might hit that button and get some in-cab footage. Now, if I can get that all done, hopefully I can bring you guys some good content in the next video, some good show content. That's really what I'm going to aim for this summer, is good show content. As for this video, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. As always, thanks for watching. Have a good one. Hey folks,